everyone, it's Margaret with Creative Stamping with Margaret. Today's card is one of the cards from the February 2025 card class. For the month of February, the focus was making 4 cards using the mixed media product suite. That is an online exclusive suite from Stampin Up. In the description of this video, you'll find a link to the online store where you can view all of the products that are in this suite, which for this card, I'm using everything but the designer series paper. And since I did, this is one of 4 cards, there are a couple cards that use that designer series paper, so you'll want to check out the other videos on using this suite. But for this suite, for this card, we are using both of the stamp sets that are part of that suite, and that's the mixed florals and the mixed labels. The die from the mixed florals, you'll be using the one that cuts the large floral image, plus you'll use this one that's for the grass in the back. Now, in the mixed labels stamp set, there is a die that will cut our sentiment, but I decided that I wanted to use a little bit larger die, so this is one from the Stylish Shapes. I decided to use that larger pennant shaped die. So let's get started. In the description of this video, you'll find a list of all the materials that I've used. I'll also have your cut dimensions. So I'm not going to be giving the cut dimensions out as I go through demonstrating the card. I just wanted to let you know that those will be available for you. So we're using our bubble bath for the card base. Then I have our 2 panels of Granny Apple Green, our layering panels. Plus I have 2 pieces of basic white, one which we will texture emboss. And let me open the card up to show you the inside. And then one for the interior. Then, of course, we're going to need a smaller piece to stamp on and of the basic white. And this is actually the thick basic white. Whenever I'm using blends, I like to use the thick basic white. And then you'll need another panel of the Granny Apple Green. If you ordered a kit to go, I just want to bring to your attention, I've notched the corners of the 2 pieces, that one is for die cutting and then one is for the stamping and die cutting, just so that you're aware of that, so that you, when you go to prepare that, you have the correct set. And I'm just pulling over my other dies here that I'm going to go ahead and pull out that large die that we're going to need that coordinates with that. So the first thing we can do is go ahead and burnish our card base. And to save time, I have already texture embossed my layer. Look, isn't that just gorgeous? Now, I'm going to show you here. Let's see, where did I place that? I moved the embossing folder off to the side, and of course now I don't have it handy, but you can do it both ways. I liked it going where I've got the paint sort of going up and down versus across. but you could do it either way in your embossing folder. So we're going to go ahead and layer this onto a panel of the Granny Apple Green. And because this is a heavy embossed piece, because it is a 3D embossing folder, I'm using my multi-purpose liquid glue because you really need a strong adhesive to hold this in place. And then next, we'll add this layer to the front of our card, the card base. And press that really well. So we can set that to the side. Excuse me for reaching across there under the where the camera is. I just need to pull things out. And this is the piece that we're going to use the greenery die on. And as I mentioned, if you receive the kit, you will have that piece that's notched. And in the dimensions, you'll notice that this piece is smaller than the other two pieces of Granny Apple Green. And the way you'll want to put this at an angle to cut it, as you see, if you put it, up vertical, you're going to cut some off. So what I did was actually found that just by putting it at an angle, it worked perfect. And there again, I'm saving a little time. So I have already pre-cut that and taken it out. So we'll have that prepared. And when we assemble, you'll see how we cut this to place it behind our floral panel. So now for some stamping, let's bring in our tuxedo black. And I'll bring in our large stamp. Now I am using the Stamparatus. I do recommend if you have the Stamparatus, or if you have the Misty, or any other stamp positioning tool, you may want to use that because this is such a large image that I find with large images, sometimes it's hard to get a good even coverage when I'm just stamping, because this way I can add a little bit more pressure. But if you don't have that and you just use your large block, just make sure that you have conditioned your stamp well and then ink it up with a freshly inked ink pad, and then hold it for a few seconds longer, just so that all of that ink transfers from your stamp onto your paper. And let me wipe my thumb. I just dropped that right and grabbed it with my thumb. Looks like I grabbed the dry ink pad. Let me grab another one. I need to ink up all of my memento pads. I have about 5 of them. But that's what's nice. I can already look at this and tell I have some bare spots. But that's what's nice about using a stamp positioning tool such as the Stamparatus or the Misty, in that you can go back and re-ink it. And I should have put that. Thank goodness I have this where it's right in the corner. That little piece wants to stay stuck on my finger. But you see, I did not get good even coverage, so that's why I'm using re-ink. There we go. And then I'm going to pull in the colors that we're going to need to color this. And you can also, if you want, well, we'll do that afterwards, but for the interior, I just stamped right the little floral. Let me pull the stamp set over. So we're using this stamp set and then this one, or this stamp and then the little flower stamp. And let's let this dry a few more minutes. And while that's drying, I am going to go ahead and stamp my interior. And then For a Great Friend was from the label stamp. I just find that sometimes it's, when I'm going to color with blends, it's good to stamp and let that sit for a few minutes to dry. And I have ink. Let me step aside. So there, I went to the sink and washed my hands. And I'm going to flip this over and stamp it again because I have the black ink that I had on my fingers. Much better. And since I'm going to stamp off, I'm going to bring in a scrap piece, even though I've already gotten ink all over my pad. Sometimes I like to keep it a little cleaner. When I'm doing the video, so you're not looking at such a messy table. Of course, on this envelope, I stamped multiple, but I'm only going to do a single one for this. So now, let's move all of this to the side. Pull in my scrap for my sentiment. And we will cut that when we're cutting the other piece after I do the coloring. So let me put that to the side. And this is pretty simple. We're only using 3 different colors. We're using Bubble Bath, Daffodil Delight, and Granny Apple Green. Let's do our larger pieces first. And I like to start with the dark first. I know some people like to go light and then come back with dark, but you do whichever you prefer. But I just like to sort of go over the lines, and then where I think it would be a little darker on the flowers, the petals. And just come back in here and go right back over that. And just, I'm not quite going all the way to the edge because the ink will spread as would be darker in there, so we'll darken that up. And then if you want even a little bit more contrast, now you can go back in with that dark and just add a little bit more where you think it would be darker. Just building the layers one on top of the other. Add a little bit more of in a few areas of the light just to blend it. It just pulls it all in. Next, let's do our yellow flowers. So this time I'm going to start with the dark again, and I'm just going to do in the middle. I'm just going to sort of lightly touch around where that little dot is in the middle of these with the dark. Now come in with our light. Oh, excuse me, I said this was Daffodil Delight. This is actually Lemon Lolly. Daffodil Delight would look great as well. I think I did one card when I was making these when I used the stamp set. It wasn't for the class, it was another card that I made, and I used the daffodil, and it was just as beautiful. And since we did these other little flowers, let's go ahead and get these done. And you see, I'm just not really coloring in that whole flower with this dark. I'm just going around right there toward the center. Now just taking the light to fill in a little bit more. So our envelope is done. Move it to the side. So now we're through with our lemon lolly. Now for our granny apple green. There again, I'm going to start with my dark. And in areas where I think it would be darker, I will color that in a little bit more. I don't want to do too many of the leaves. I need to go back and so it doesn't dry too much on me. I'm going to do that entire stem. Since the leaf behind it, I'll have more of the light, so we have that little bit of contrast. And of course, you can always pull in your color lifter to lift a little color. Flip to my brush end here on this larger portion. I do tend to color more with the pointed end. I find I have a little bit better control, but for large sections, definitely makes sense to use the brush end. I'm going to come back with my, oops, I see I missed this part over here. Let me get that so I can get it to blend. Now, if you wanted, you could also use a different green for the stems, say a mossy meadow maybe, but I decided to stay with the granny apple green on them. And I'm imagining that there is shadow there, so that's going to be a little bit darker. So that's why I've opted to do that. Color that area completely, almost. Sort of think of where the light would hit it, where it would be lighter versus darker. it would be darker around those flowers because they're going to cover it. So I'll come back with some dark to add a little bit more shading. And of course, once this dries, they'll blend even more. It won't. So don't think if you're coloring and you think, oh, it's so splotchy, or just give it time. Give it a few minutes. And the key is to try not to oversaturate the paper. That cuts down on the bleeding there. So now we will pull in the die and line that up, and I'm going to step over to my die machine and I'll be right back. Well, I'm going to come back to the light to make sure that I have this lined up good. The lighting is better here than it is over where I have my die cutting machine. So we have our flowers, we have our sentiment. So now we can complete the rest of our card. Let's go ahead and do the interior. So now we can look at placing where we want to place this, and I am using dimensionals. I'm going to use dimensionals for this top layer. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in my dimensionals, and put them on the back. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I use lots of dimensionals. I just want to make sure that everything holds in its place. So before I take the backs off of those, I'm just going to determine it's going to set like so. Then I'm going to pull in my paper snips, and I'm going to cut off right in this area. I'm just going to go ahead in there and snip this. I'm going to cut these last two off here. And then I just like to lay it down just to sort of get an idea where I want to place it, get this going correctly. I want it coming off as such, so I'm just going to leave that. And I'm going to pull in my stamping seal. You could also use mini glue dots, but I found it was easy just to lift and just put a little bit there. And this goes a little bit higher. And then, of course, you want some of it to stand up. You see how it has a little bit more dimension, but I am going to put just a touch a little bit higher up there to hold that. And of course, once we put this on top, it's going to hold it in place as well. Now the fun part, removing the back, all of these dimensionals. The Take My Pick tool is really good to use for stabbing the backs of these dimensionals as well. Now we can add our sentiment, and I am putting I will use a glue dot to hold it in the middle, but I'm going to take a stamping dimensional and put it on each side, because this is popped up. So I want this to be popped up. I mean, even though it's going to be flat here, it does hang over, so you want it to be at that same level. And as I said, I am going to put a glue dot in the middle just to help hold it, even though these dimensionals will do that. I find just that little extra helps. And now we will embellish it. We're going to use, you could use either the gold or the Petal Pink. I'm going to use the gold ones, but any of these look good. Would look great with this card. My Take Your Pick tool is in another part of the house, so that's why I'm using the tip end of some scissors here. Let's see, wait just a second. Do I have it here? No, I don't. I like these low profile embellishments. They add that extra pop, but don't add a whole lot to the card as far as when you put it in the envelope, you don't have to worry about it making a big hole when it goes through processing. Then the next thing is I have used the gold twine, and this is 5 loops. I did a 5 loop bow. Of course, you could use any other type of ribbon, but I just thought this little gold twine made a cute, really cute bow. The baker's twine, regular baker's twine, would look good too. So there, we have completed our For a Great Friend card using the mixed media product suite from Stampin' Up. This is Margaret Knight. Thanks for joining me. And if you would, take a moment and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget, in the description of this video, you will find all of the materials used, as well as the dimensions of the cardstock, so that you will have that available for use. Have a great rest of your day.